Go, excellent. Okay, so we're now coming to item B1, which is the recommendations from the Infrastructure and Community Services Committee. It's pages 74. I just have one small problem, which is recommendation 2, part 2. The wording on my agenda says consider the following recommendations. I think the word should be adopt the following recommendations, but that's just my view.
What page are you on? It was
74.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Apologies. So there's two recommendations. One is to receive the report from the Infrastructure and Community Services, and then one is to, well, strictly speaking, it's to adopt the recommendations approved by the or carried by the Infrastructure and Community.
I would agree with that.
Yep. Okay, so do we have a mover to receive the report? We do. Councillor Plimmer, Councillor Sadler-Footer, thank you. Anything you wish to say, Councillor Plimmer?
No. Yes, and move on.
Yes, and move on.
Very, very quick update. So, Councillor Sadler-Footer and I are meeting with the library manager after this meeting today. We hope to have an interim roster agreed, fingers crossed, by the end of today. And by the end of this week, we'll have a draft terms of reference for the review.
Excellent. So, all in favour that we receive the report? Aye. We come to 2.2, which is adopt the following recommendations. In fact, there's only notice 2, carried by the Infrastructure and Community Services Committee. I will move that. Councillor Plymouth seconds it, and the particular items that the committee recommended that there be an interim roster developed for 12 weeks. Then there be a review, which I think you've just referred to, and then over the page there was a recommendation to delegate to the CE approval to spend some money from the remuneration budget just to carry things over while the review is taking place. Does the seconder wish to comment?
No.
Okay, any comments from anyone? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's that. So now we come to decision reports by the interim chief executive. Item C1 is dog controls and bylaws.
Mr. Mayor, given my previous I'm going to dispute
Thank you. So let's note that
Change of approach. The control of dogs. Who wants to go?
I can just give a little bit of a summary. Our current control of dogs policy and bylaw were adopted in 2013 and are now due for review. If the bylaw is not reviewed by October 1st of 2023, it will revoke automatically after 2 years. And then if a new bylaw is reinstated, it will go back to a 2-year review period. Now, today we are asking council to agree that a dog control bylaw is the best way for managing dog control in the district. And we're also seeking adoption of the consultation document, which includes the statement of proposal, draft policy, and draft bylaw. As part,
and if I could just interrupt, that is on page 106. So thank you.
As part of the engagement process up until this point, we have sent out information regarding the dog control policy and bylaw review to all of the dog owners in the district with dog registration. We've also advertised at dog parks and asked for feedback from the community on what they think of the current policy and the current bylaw. We've made a few changes based on this feedback that we've received, including a purpose statement and some policy principles. We have reformatted the policy and bylaw into the new template. We've added an introductory statement that recognizes the value of dog ownership, as we heard from the community that the bylaw and the policy are very negative, and there are a lot of benefits to dog ownership. So we thought that that might be useful to recognize. We've also made changes to align the policy and bylaw. Perhaps one of the biggest changes that we're looking for feedback from the community on is that our current policy and bylaw prohibits dogs in coastal camping areas. We've heard from the public that it would be nice to be able to take their dogs camping, as this is a tourist destination. Lots of people are coming with camper vans and RVs, and they aren't aware that dogs aren't allowed at these camping areas. So that would be something that we would be keen to consider as part of the consultation with the community and drafting the policy and bylaw.
Very good. Right.
May I
Thank
have
you.
one very quick addition? It's worth noting that under the Emergency Management Act, it's actually one of our 3 statutory obligations to ensure that appropriate animal control measures are in place. So this is a really important piece of work.
Can I just mention about the coastal one, because having been involved as a coastal ranger back in 2009 up till about 2013 or something, 2012, the management of dogs was really an important element for those coastal communities in terms of measles, sheep measles and stuff like that. You know, where our farming community out there were actually a little upset because a lot of people were bringing their dogs. They weren't under control, and they weren't, and there was a risk. Also, bites and highly populated camping reserves, of course, attract some individuals who aren't particularly clear on their dogs. Does the policy cover dogs being restrained? If we were to go that way out for consultation, dogs would obviously we'd be looking at some level of restraint and some level of and also the enforcement side of it as well. They're isolated communities, and therefore council would need to put the resources in basically to ensure that people were complying with what we require in their bylaw.
Yeah, absolutely. So the feedback on dogs in coastal areas, as you said, is quite mixed. There is quite a group that is quite keen to have them allowed. And then again, we've had some concerns raised from farmers in the area about sheep measles and other sort of factors that could have an economic impact on their stock. So I think when laying out the options, we're keen to sort of get some feedback from the community and what that might look like. So either having dogs allowed in certain areas, maybe non-peak times, and then there would of course be some signage and enforcement that would need to take place around that. I think Rick's quite keen to make sure that any sort of provisions that would be in place would ensure that the dogs were tied up on a certain length of lead, not roaming. So I think that all of those will be taken into account, when making any decision.
Councillor Boss.
So just further comment, well, does that take into consideration sort of any dock requirements around seals, penguins, etc. on the coast? Does that form part of our policy?
The Conservation Act is one of the things that we looked at, to ensure that we're mindful of wildlife and protection requirements for wildlife.
Thank you.
I think that's the Conservation Act is listed as one of the pieces of legislation that we have to consider.
Right. Cool. So the substantive motion is that we adopt the statement of proposal. Everything else is basically that we what we've got in etc. That it's all in order, and that we then delegate the CEO to amend it to include any statements agreed by council or minor consequential edits. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Just one question. It's quite coincidental. I was talking with people in Marsden the other day. How Marsden and Carlton in South Wairarapa all seem to have different rules and different bits with their dog bylaws. We looked at doing a joint one, so the whole district has the same, so if there's,
So we have a joint policy and bylaw program of work with the three councils. And I think we're starting to move in that direction. Lots of our current policies and bylaws are due for review at different times. So it will take a little bit of time, I think, if we're looking at aligning them all. But any opportunity that we have, we are taking to be able to combine our programs at work so that it's consistent across the district.
Right, so I don't believe I hear anybody in opposition to anything yet. So I'll take items, recommendations 1 to 6 as a total package. Do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Olds, councillor Sadler for the seconds. All in favour of recommendations 1 to 6, please say aye.
Aye.
And didn't hear anyone saying otherwise, that's carried. Which now brings us on to something that's much more satisfying, which is let's get rid of the dross. So we're on page 123, and the page 123 contains a number of policies that we presumably do not need any longer. So I'll just start by, do I have a mover that this report be received? I do. Thank you, councillor Elam, seconded councillor Bosley. We'll talk about it, then we'll possibly agree. Okay, who wants to? You again?
I think it's me again. So we're working through quite a large number of policies and bylaws and working to update everything and make sure that all of the policies that we have as an organization are fit for purpose. As part of this, we had 4 policies that were initially revoked, and then a further review identified 4 further policies that are no longer fit for purpose or would be more suitable in a different format. They are all attached in the appendices of this report. So we are seeking direction from council to be able to revoke these policies and then make a minor amendment to the grants policy, which was recently adopted, to incorporate any information from these revoked policies into that new policy.
And just a quick question, if we, when we come to the relevant motion, we do agree, does that mean that those policies are revoked from midnight tonight or when?
As of when we endorse.
Yeah, I think that's
The
from
resolution.
today, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So any comments? I mean, would anybody like to abolish another couple while we're at it?
We are trying.
We're trying really hard.
Thank you.
Station. I have to say, I'm really happy because obviously you're finding some things are not fit for purpose, and that's really good. But a lot of the stuff that's in those can be incorporated into another policy of some description. So we're not having a duplication all the way through. So I'm pretty impressed. It's really great. Thanks.
All right. Councillor Elam.
Thanks for that, Mayor Martin. Just going through those policies, they've certainly been around for a long, long time, 2007 or even earlier. Some of them were amended a number of years ago, and then they're up for review for 4 or 5 years ago, but that obviously hasn't occurred due to the workload of council and staff over that time. But yeah, just to reiterate what Colin and others have had to say, great that big, the time and effort that you're putting into it to review and revoke. It's great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So now we will vote that the report be received. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, I don't hear anybody standing up in favour of any of the 4 policies that are about possibly to be revoked. So therefore, I propose again a one size fits all agreement to revoke them all as a job lot. And I will move that. Do I have a second?
Happy to see.
I do. Thanks, councillor Olds. I don't think we need to talk.
No.
Okay. Anybody wish to oppose? No. Okay. All in favour that we revoke the following 4 policies, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Agree to amend the grants policy. Do I have a mover for that? I do. Councillor Olds, seconder, councillor Sadler Footer. Any comments from anyone? makes good sense. I think all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, thank you. So that's done. Now we come to something possibly more substantive, which is the representation review, page 147 in the agenda.
Code of conduct in mind.
Closing options first.
So representation review. And I did just have a comment, but firstly, do we have somebody to move that the report be received, please? We do, councillor Sadler-Footer, I'll second. So therefore, the general topic is up for discussion. What do people think, please?
Can I make a comment on, I'm a supporter of first past the post. That's obviously in type of electioneering that I've worked under over the years. There are some complications, obviously with a single transferable vote in terms of administration and delay as well, because often STV can take some time to get a final result. And if you're a candidate and you're pacing the floor at the following day, still with no clear outcome, it can be right, stressing. But overall, I think if first past the post is very straightforward and very that's my thank you.
Thanks, Smith. On the view, Colin, I think first past the post is very simple. From the little bit of research I've done and the people I've talked to that have been involved in the other systems, it's very complicated. Even people voting find it very hard to understand and who they're actually voting for. And there's one other thing that sort of was a bit of a worry, is the cost. If we change it, what is the cost of the ratepayer? And at the moment, I'm pretty sure the ratepayer do not want any more cost burdens on.
Thank you, councillor. Yes, I think it's possibly just good to clear up what it is he may be voting on right at this instant. So if we were to change the voting system, then we have to have a resolution to that effect by the 12th of September. That would therefore still leave a final decision for somewhere around the 12th of December. It doesn't actually commit us right at this moment, but it sets a direction of travel, I suppose. If we decide, for example, going along with the last two speakers, that we don't want that resolution, then that is pretty much, well, there won't be a resolution and we'll stick with the status quo, except that a poll of voters might overrule that and request that a poll take place. Basically, 5% of voters can demand a poll, in which case we pay for that cost anyway. Alternatively, we ourselves could agree to conduct a poll in order to find out what people think. So there's sort of some subtle options in there. And do we have anybody who wishes to speak in favour of approving a resolution to move to SPT? Well, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think my understanding with it is that with the first past the post, it is easier, like it says, easier to use, easier to understand, easier to process system. From my understanding, though, is that the STV system is likely to have better representation and diversity as an outcome from that voting system. So I think it's something that we should not necessarily dismiss out of hand either.
I'll just say one thing that I think is in favour of STV, and I'm not sure that at one level I think it is likely to make a huge difference to the composition of the council for all sorts of reasons. But one thing, if I just take the last mayoral competition, for example, there were 3 mayoral candidates. No, there were only 4. Thank you very much. Thank you. And in the end, it came down largely to what I call the 2 front runners. And what that means is that anybody who voted for the 2 back runners, in a sense, can come away from the whole process and feel that their vote just is not counted. And that's true. In a sense, their vote did not count. But they voted for the final person. In an STV system, what now would have happened is their votes would have been reallocated to one of the others, and they could have at least come out of it feeling that, you know, I, as a voter, did get to have my say. To me, that's actually the biggest difference between the 2 systems. Whether it's enough to convince a change of heart from the status quo. Thank you.
Just a quick question, and sort of, I guess, further to Councillor Woodcock's question. At this point in time, do we have any indication of the cost that changing the voting system would incur?
Page 152, Deputy Mayor.
152, did I?
That's the financial, for you, sorry, that's the financial impact of
I did my
poll.
Yeah,
yeah.
We do know that switching to STV, currently it's only
It's about 25% more.
25% more than the current,
election.
yeah.
plus the cost of a poll.
Yeah.
We don't have to do a poll.
Oh, we don't.
So as the mayor explained, the 2 triggers for a poll are either you decide to conduct a poll or 5% of the population put in a petition. It has to be residents, and that tips a poll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The challenge, of course, is that leaving the opportunity to control till later on, that means, of course, that the decision needs to be made by that September timeline. So, yeah, if you're going to go with a poll, then we really need to flag that's something. Yeah.
Sorry, just me again.
Yes.
I wonder if there are other parts of the representation review that would have a greater community interest over and above voting options part, where our money may or may not be better invested.
Yes, so we have taken direction from the previous election around the Māori wards and seen that as been highlighted by the last council as being an area wanting further investigation. So for us, Māori ward is something that we would like to invest.
We've also got Leanne online. So Leanne and Nikki have both been working or having conversations with the Māori Standing Committee about how we engage with mana whenua around Māori wards over the next few months.
And I think it's fair to say there is a second deadline, which comes up next, I just forget the exact date.
25th November.
Thank you very much. So we're discussing, this is a bit of a rolling cycle. So today we're discussing first past the post. The next meeting we'll be discussing Māori wards. And then subsequently we'll be discussing everything else, which will be a different sort of conversation.
So just in terms, sorry, your worship, but just in terms of if we were to send a poll out on the way we vote, for instance, first past the post is against. Could we incorporate a poll, for instance, that covered off on certainly at a representation level, a Māori ward, as well as the question about a poll, about the way we vote as well? Could that be incorporated? If we were to go down that path, can we?
There's been an amendment to the Electoral Act, which has removed a poll option for the Māori ward.
Okay.
So that would be the biggest change. So that happened this year. The other thing that's happening at the moment through Parliament is that they are suggesting that by next election cycle, it will become a mandatory vote for council for Māori ward. So that's also on the horizon for the next
triennium
cycle. Yeah. So at the moment, we could go out for a poll for voting options, and then also for things like community boards, number of councillors, wards, boundary lines, but not the Māori ward.
Councillor McCall.
Yeah, I think certainly in the longer term, it should be looked at as, we've covered the fact, it certainly does seem to support minority groups getting representative a little bit more. But I just think the pragmatics of it is we have got so much going on and so much change and a shortage of staff, and this does mean more work. And since it doesn't seem to be an urgent need for it to be looked at, couldn't it perhaps be deferred to would next year be a reasonable cycle? Yeah.
So
So
we can't do it. This is the cutoff for the next election, which is in 2025.
yes, okay, well, that would be my suggestion.
Just through you, Chair, in response to Councillor Old's thinking about the next cycle, the engagement around and formal consultation around the size of the wards, how many councillors have, community boards will probably push out past the LTP. So we'll get through the LTP, and that gives us time to have that conversation with the community when things, I think there's a real risk of engagement fatigue, which is something that Councillor Macaulay has spoken.
Just on that.
Councillor.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know, the simple fact that, Amanda, you've put so much words around single transferable vote suggests to me that things so bloody complicated. Nobody wants it. No, not one person has ever raised with me an issue of, oh boy, I want single transferable vote. In fact, when we did it for our district health boards, all the people did to me, I just blindly get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the beauty about first past the post, it is simple. It is so simple. And if you want to stand for council, stand. If you can't gainer the votes to get on, well, you don't deserve to be here. Quite frankly, I'm sorry, it's as simple as that.
Popularity.
Secondly, the point I would say is we're going into an election, a national election, and how many days it is, and we may well find that we don't exist in time for the next election. We might be voting for one council in the Wairarapa. We might be voting, things might have changed quite dramatically. So why would we bother doing this now when we don't even know what's going to happen in 4 months' time? What's the point? It's a complete waste of money.
Okay, so we're still
Agreement.
still discussing whether to receive the report or not. And I don't see anybody new who wants to make a comment.
Well, Rebecca's had a hand.
Rebecca's already had a chance, actually,
Going to pile on.
and she can speak again when it comes to the next recommendation. So, all in favour that we receive the report? please?
Aye.
Excellent. Now we come to the recommendation. Now, I find the recommendation is worded slightly ambiguous, and what I would like to do is to change it to recommend that we do not proceed to a resolution by the 12th of December. So in other words, we're quite simple. We're either going to go for it or we're not going to go for it. And if we don't go for it, that's that. Do go for it, well, we get another chance to reconsider. So did you give my words a chance?
Is that recommended?
Yes, correct. Okay, so I will move that. Do I have a second, please? What are the words?
Recommend that we do not seek a resolution by 12th of September.
We're just sticking with
Which means what? We're saying if it's
Paying with a status quo.
okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay, right. So I think Councillor Plymouth, I won't say any more than I think we just need a simple what direction do we want to go in. And Councillor Gray, it's your turn.
I would just, so to reflect. Councillor Plummer added, we have had a history of voter turnout dropping, and so engagement is dropping off. And part of the reason, I would imagine, is that people feel like their vote doesn't matter. But it's a throwaway thing. Like you say, it's between two people and you couldn't really care less who they are. Whereas if we had a system where there was, I guess, more weight put onto people's intentions, would they really wanted to go with their governance, that maybe voter turnout would increase. that's,
Right, councillor Cool, I think I saw your hand.
Oh, no, right.
Okay, right here. Anybody else? Okay, well, look, oh, yes, thank you.
Just, I think, on Vic's comment here about, people don't think their vote doesn't count. I think when it comes to voting, I think it's more that they think it doesn't matter who they vote for, nothing's going to change. I don't think it's so much about who's getting on, it's more about government dictatorship towards councils now, where we're getting forced to do so much stuff that makes no difference anyway.
Okay, thank you. I'll just,
Leanne.
yes, Leanne.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add some important information, and I may be too late coming in here. But the Māori Standing Committee are actually still deciding, as an opinion from them, which would be the best electoral process. And I believe there was some focus on the ST, whatever, STV process. They are still making the decision whether that can be incorporated into a decision. I'm not sure at this late stage.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just have a very brief reply. In my head, all other things being equal, I would actually vote for STV. But I think there are practical realities. It does cost more. It does require more explanation. It is unlikely to change results greatly, I believe, but I'm certainly open to argument there. I just don't think it's possible for us in the present circumstances to propose anything that unnecessarily adds to ratepayers' costs. So that's where I should be voting. Okay, so I shall put the vote. Can you please read the recommendation?
Recommend that we do not see.
Right, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Right.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Do we need to change the word recommend because we're actually the decision makers? Who are we recommending it to?
Yes.
To ourselves.
Okay. So let's.
All right. I agree. Change recommend.
Agree.
Thank you for spotting that. Well spotted. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So now we come, I think, to the proposed code of conduct, and which page is that? I think it's 154. Thank you. Right. So do I have a mover that the report be received? I do. Thank you, Councillor Gray, Councillor Sadler-Fotter. Councillor Gray, the floor is yours.
I don't have anything to pay for it.
Okay, Councillor Sadler-Fotter.
No, much the same. I think we just need to get on with it.
Does anybody have anything to say? Yes.
Can I ask, this is superseding the previous one where we had two code of conducts, because we had the old one and then we had the new one, and now we've got a new one. So this is version 3.
This is the new
This is the
one.
new one. Okay. Have the community board said yes to this?
So the community boards have seen this, through you, Chair, apologies. The community boards have seen this code of conduct. They've all had sessions, little workshops with officers to talk through the changes, and we haven't had any further feedback. They've had the opportunity to adopt it, but none of them have actively taken up the opportunity to adopt at this point.
And that is probably the thing that's like,
To adopt a code of conduct, like we
They do.
they do.
So what's causing this?
Yeah, still on an old with the very first version of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the reticence is. That's the right word. Hesitation is. We'll go back to them again then at the next meetings and then invite them to adopt.
I thought Greytown had voted to. Greytown Community Board voted to adopt it.
I think maybe it needs to be retabled then in that case, if there's some
I guess we'll get a
uncertainty.
check.
Double check their minutes.
Certainly,
There was, I think, the point that councillor Plummer raises is in the wording where it says you recommend that the council and the community boards adopt the code of conduct. And I think what he is saying is we can adopt it for ourselves, but I don't believe we can adopt it on behalf
Yep, that's
of
fair.
everybody. So
Yep.
my suggestion with everybody's approval is that we would just admit and community boards. Okay. Right. So I saw a hand. Yes, I did.
If through you, Mr. Chair, the one thing that I, on reflection, is thinking about it in a logical way is the need for a panel for reports to actually be tabled to. It's the current process means that an investigation is undertaken, whether it be a tabletop exercise or whether it be a full investigation. It hovers in the ether without any kind of course of action. So I would actually like to recommend to council that an adjustment be made, that council would look to form a panel for considering the outcomes of any investigations that's brought to bring conclusion to an investigatory process.
What's the makeup of that look like? I mean,
Representation of council, a subset basically, a committee.
My question would be to what effect though, because there is no enforcement.
Enforcement is limited, council, yeah.
It's a wet butstick, the whole thing.
Well, I will give you that, councillor. It certainly feels that way sometimes, but there is some action that can be taken, but it is minimal. But at the moment, it just it feels like we hover there without bringing it to a conclusion. And the reality is as well is that, as the report states, we've got to think about public interest. And the demonstration of having a committee that closes the process off will show that there's rigor being put into that whole process. Rather, should it be legormable at some point?
So here's a question for you, Amanda. We have to have a code of conduct by law. This is a draft from, or effectively LGD. As a council, can we add things to it to say, as a council, we're adopting this. If something happens, these are some range, so we could say you stood down from council for a month or all of those. Can we as a council go further than what LGNZ says?
Through you, Chair, the recommended actions from LGNZ are, for example, things like suspension from holding a chair or being on a particular committee, and things like public apologies. But how do you enforce those? Under the legislation, for example, I can't unelect you, and I can't not pay you. So I think it gets really complicated because it's not like you're employed. It's not like we have the Employment Act.
I feel like for example, vote to stand you down. So you still get paid and so on, but it means you can't attend meetings and you can't.
What you're asking is, can council adopt their own consequences for breaches?
I don't think so, but I can check.
so
Councillor Bosley.
What's the approximate cost of a breach of code of conduct investigation now? And would a panel, like you're suggesting, save any?
For the initial tabletop exercise, because it's a two-stage process, it's in the region of about $3,000 to $4,000. To then go on to a more substantial, you could be looking at 15,000 to 20,000 plus legal costs.
So would the panel represent a saving as such?
No, basically what the panel would do is just to receive those and bring the whole thing to a close. As I say, at the moment, nothing happens with an outcome from any investigation.
Just being added.
So $15,000 and no consequences if you're found to be in breach of the code.
Unfortunately,
Consequences or outcomes are given by the investigator. They are
Recommendation.
recommended
The
outcomes.
recommendations.
But there's no way to enforce that those recommendations are followed.
That's a failing.
that's probably failing in the LGA. I'm sorry, but
Councillor Elam.
Going through the draft on page 20, paragraph 2.3, actions that may be applied when a breach has been confirmed. There's 15 points or options determining a response to a breach of the code of conduct. One or more of the following could be selected. These 15 points. 15, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not enforceable. Can't enforce them.
Councillor Woodcock, I think I saw your hand.
Oh, no.
Okay, right. Just to make a comment, I'd be reluctant to add your amendment, or unless it's been a paper that actually described a little bit of the detail and the stated goal. But I think there's no problem in us adopting an amendment at some point.
Absolutely.
I understand.
So, okay, I see no further. So we're at the receiving. Officers recommend that the council receive the code of conduct. All in favour, please say aye. Okay, so now we come to the substantive part, which is adopting the code or otherwise. So I think we can go with recommendations 2 and 3 together. Do I have somebody to move the adoption of the code and the appendix? I do. Councillor Olds, a seconder, please. Councillor Sadler-Footer. Councillor Olds, do you wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Councillor Sadler-Footer. Anybody? Okay, all in favour of the adoption, please say aye. Okay, that's carried.
Claire, could we have as action items for our staff to report back on how far we can, the enforcement option and as action items to have that, right?
Absolutely. So we now come to the standing orders, which are on page 195. 195. Yep. So again, we have a report in front of us. I'll move that the report be received. Do I have a seconder, please? I do. Councillor Elams, all in favour, please say aye. Okay. I don't think there's a particular need to speak at this point. So there was so I just had one point, if I can find it again. The 4.3 on page 196, preparation of the agenda. The proposed standing orders have been amended to make it clear that the CEO prepares an agenda on behalf of the chairperson and must consult the chairperson. What is actually the change from the status? Because that looked remarkably like the status quo to me.
I think it's the word must. I think it used to be, might be may or could.
I see.
Yeah, it was,
Oh,
so we've
okay.
strengthened it.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. So that's my one question answered. Thanks very much. Yes, Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss part 18.3. Chair has a casting vote. The Local Government Act is very specific in this manner, and I'll just read it out to you. Section 3. So, it's 18.3 of the actual
Standing orders.
standing orders.
I'll see if I can find the page.
Page 2,
Now the presiding the meeting will be
page 45 on Stella.
Yeah.
passed.
So I haven't got the Local Government Act, but the Local Government Act is very specific. It says that the mayor or chair has a deliberate vote. And then it says the mayor or chair does not have a casting vote unless we determine that that's the case. So as a council, we can overrule the LGA and put in a casting vote. My argument has always been that a casting vote, to my mind, is undemocratic. Where there's 10 of us here, we all have a vote. If we can't get a majority of people, i.e. 6 votes around the table, then the status quo should stay. By having a 5-all draw and then a casting vote, to my mind, is very undemocratic and is open to the foibles of a chair or a mayor or whatever. And I just don't think it's right, because we are collectively responsible for any decisions we make. If you have a 5-all draw, you are making one person responsible for that decision, and that is not democracy. So I would propose that we remove 18.3.
Councillor Whitlock. Alistair, I hate to say, I kind of agree with you.
It is.
Picture this moment.
Recorded from prosperity.
I need to make a note of date and time. Have you got that shield? It's a headline.
That's great. Yeah, this, I sort of see Alistair's point. It is a bit like it takes the democracy out of it a bit. If you can't come to a conclusion, then status quo should stay, because it's not a.
And the law is specific. If you can't get a majority, the status quo is then deemed to be in effect. So, you want to change something, you've got to get a majority.
That's in the government rules.
That's
So why are we trying to make our own rules? And sometimes you'd like to.
Oh, no, this is in the rules too.
Yes, it is in the law. It is
They're both in the rules.
Yeah. My point is that I don't think we shouldn't adopt this. We should actually be saying that we are all responsible, and therefore, if you can't gain the support around the table for your proposal, it shouldn't go ahead.
So is it a removal of 18.3 or is it an amendment of 18.3?
Removed.
So I'm going to open up the debate a little bit more, because I actually believe there should be a casting vote, to be quite honest, because one of the things we find it's not always possible to get consensus around the table. Some issues are a little bit tricky, and you can go round and round and round in circles, So at the end of the day, giving that responsibility for somebody to assess the information, and I would hope that the casting vote, for instance, would be. In fact, I've seen casting votes where the mayor, for instance, has voted for. The casting votes come around and he's voted opposing it. So it's a mind swing of I guess of the debate and how it transforms. I think if you don't have that, you'll find that decisions won't get made. You'll be going round and round in circles. If you can't, the other way of going about, of course, to get the consensus, we always try to negotiate. In other words, or make amendments so that it fits within whatever we're discussing at the time. And that way we can probably build towards getting consensus. And I'm sure that we try to do that on a number of occasions rather than go towards casting vote. But I'm just,
So could I just clarify something that you said? So a 5-all draw is a decision. That means no change. So it is actually a decision.
No, it's not.
Well, it is.
It's not a majority.
No, but the law states if you can't get a majority, the status quo stays. So it is actually a decision in itself.
Yeah.
You've noted people haven't.
Certainly was it. It's interesting. Heckle points. I do agree with Alistair too. If there is a status quo, but sometimes I think you do need a majority to change it, just to do it on one vote. I think you should be able to work round towards more of a difference in that. I don't think you're going to get total consensus, or not very often. But what when you don't have a status quo? For example, when we did do the vote on the method for the employing the chief executive, I mean, we didn't really have a status quo. We couldn't say, well, what we did 6-8 years ago, that's not really a status quo. So that's a question to you, Alistair. So what do you do?
No, but you had a majority.
But if
people who voted against it.
But if you have a draw in that case, if you have a draw, and you don't have the status quo.
Same status quo.
It's not. So if you have a draw,
Well,
well, if we have 5 each voting for or against, for example, the chief executive process we're using, right? So if it was a draw in that case, if it was, and we didn't have a status quo,
Yeah.
so we didn't have a status quo to remain with.
in that regard, I would say it would be a very dangerous thing to appoint somebody as a chief executive on the space of a casting vote. I just think that would,
So you wouldn't go ahead with the process?
no, you would say, okay, that person's obviously not suitable, and you'd go back and start again.
No, sorry, I'm talking about the methodology. If you're voting for something and you haven't got a status quo, so, and if you're voting for something new, if we can just say to, well, sorry, can you?
So one example was when we were voting on how we were going to fund the sludge pump, there was come to a tied decision.
Yeah,
The mayor, this is the question I was going to ask, the mayor said he didn't want to use this casting vote then. So we went back and negotiated, delegated, made amendments and that.
Yeah.
Come to a conclusion. My question would be, if that didn't come to a conclusion, would the mayor have to use his casting vote, or can he,
No, you wouldn't, because there was already a decision on the use of those funds. So what we were voting for was to change the use of those funds.
but what if there wasn't a decision on that? Well, I'm putting this, if the example I used was we were voting whether to, what method to use for the chief executive appointment. We did it in-house like we're doing, or I think the other option was going out to a recruitment firm. Okay, so just for example, in that one, if we had a draw, so right, if we were five each, and there isn't a status quo to go high. So how do you resolve that if you don't have the casting vote?
I think that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
I could
Debate it out like we did.
Debate it out like we could.
Yeah, but what if we
I
couldn't?
could interrupt.
Yeah.
Just on a matter of fact, if I could ask those people who've been on council the longest, Colin, Alistair, how many times has a casting vote been used in your recollection?
None up until you.
You're the only one that I know.
You're the only one that I know of who's had to use a casting
No, I
vote.
didn't use a casting vote.
Well, I think for the funding of the, yes, you did for the likes of the funding, the better off funding, for instance.
For that
Yeah,
one.
no, you voted to the status quo.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So that was the casting vote, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That was the
on
casting.
one occasion,
So that's the same time I know it's been used, so.
So to pick up Councillor McCauley's point, which I think is a very live possibility, the government passes a law and says you must adopt either course A or course B. End of story. You must do it. And we end up at a particular point, 50-50. Unless you have a casting vote, you have a real problem. And I think we can easily think out some other examples like that, but I also suspect they are remarkably rare.
Yes,
And I
but
suspect
they are rare, I'm sure.
normally,
Yes,
most people with a casting vote, so I can think of exceptions, tend to go towards the status quo for the very reason that Councillor Plummer had raised, that actually nobody has been persuasive enough to get a majority to change.
But I then amend it then and say, why don't we look at that and say, okay, if we're going to use a casting vote, we can only use a casting vote where there isn't a status quo.
exactly, yes.
With that,
We're not at the point yet where we're.
I'm just trying to.
That's
Agree with you entirely. It was just that possibility that we could.
So at this stage, we're talking about the receiving the report. All in favour, please say aye. So now we're coming to the substantive recommendation. And again, I think we have to exclude the word community board. I think it's up to them. And so number 2, adopt the LGNZ standing orders for the conduct of its meetings and those of its committee. Well, I would suggest we exclude community boards and leave them to the side. And if we could pick up Councillor Plummer's wording.
Yeah, forgive me, Mr. Mayor, this is on the use of the community boards in this case. They community boards need to use council standing orders.
Okay, right. Excellent, right, okay, so whether they were there or not. Okay, right, so what I want to do is to pick up councillor Plimmer's wording. So we'll move that we adopt the standing orders for the conduct of its meetings with the alteration to, or how would you like to word it, Alison?
Well, there's a delegation to the chief executive to approve minor edits.
But I don't
Is
think
that
this,
enough?
I don't think this is minor editing.
So if the mayor, chairperson, or any other person presiding at a meeting has a deliberative vote, and in the case of an equity of votes, has a casting vote only when there is no status quo.
Just to check it, we've got that.
Want me to do the second one, adopt, and I
Yeah.
can do with the following change?
Yeah.
With that change included, yeah. I've got
Okay,
it, yeah.
yeah.
Can I just make sure, Amanda, does that work? Does that,
I think that's perfectly within your,
that's not going to cause.
I don't think so.
That's it.
Excuse me.
Okay, sorry, we don't have a seconder. So I've moved it. Do we have a seconder?
I think Aidan's been waiting to speak for quite a while.
Yeah, do you wish to second it though? Okay, councillor Sadler Footer. Okay, I don't think I need to talk. Councillor Ealams.
My point was, now that we've covered 18.3, I was just wondering if we cover off another point within the standing orders.
Go for it.
18.7, which is just the next page over, where it's got members may abstain. Now, there's just a small sentence there, any member may abstain from voting, but I'm just wondering as to whether there's benefit of putting in actually what the definition of abstaining as opposed to abstention is, abstaining, so that it's spelt out exactly what abstaining is, as opposed to voting for or against a motion, having something in there for a definition for abstaining.
Well, I think, to be fair, the definition of abstaining is very clear to most people. It's neither voting yes nor voting no.
But
Are you saying some criteria for why you would do that?
or the definition, I mean, last week, I think we had a meeting where two members of council abstained, and they stated why they abstained from that motion.
Probably I did it at the wrong time.
Well, yes, sorry, well, I've got, yes.
The definition in the front in definitions. I noticed that happened a lot last triennium, so I included that definition in the front.
Thank you very much, Amy. I hadn't picked that up.
That's fine. What is the definition? So we all. Oh,
It means a member formally declines to vote either for or against a motion, usually due to conflict of interest, or does not possess enough information to make a decision.
I think the thing that was potentially a little more unusual about what happened last week was that people actually requested that their abstention be recorded. But I can tell you that there are many votes that happen on a regular basis where some people vote aye, some people vote nay, and other people do not vote at all. And we don't normally record that. We just record the some result. Okay, so back to you, Councillor Ealams.
In that case, under that section, could we just make a referral back to the definition in the glossary? Sorry, in the
Definition?
in the definition, sorry, not the glossary, yeah.
You wouldn't normally.
Yep, not a problem. I think that will be covered by a minor edit. Okay,
Thank you.
right.
Mr. Mayor, can I make?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Just a very minor point on the issue of abstentions is the last triennium in particular, we observed quite a number of abstentions. The interesting thing is that the for or against or lacking information, there's got to be a discussion. I feel my recommendation would be that there's a discussion around what is enough information. Because quite often, that can become an exhaustive process where, you've all information possible has been presented, and yet someone, a councillor or a community board member may still choose to abstain because they may not agree, you know, so there's some complexity around that as well.
Can I just, is it right if I just comment to Paul's comment? Because one of the things that we have, and I've always been conscious about when we get our agendas and our papers basically for our council meetings, you know, and I must admit lately I've got a bit lazy, but generally when they arrive, I read them. And if there is any gaps in some of the information that I need to make a decision, I'm generally on the phone to the CE to get some clarity around it, and he sends me the information that's necessary. I think that's, you know, that to me is the system that's worked really, really well for me. So for somebody to abstain because they lack of information, they've still had ample time to be able to gather further information or make their feelings known either to the mayor or the CE well in advance of the meeting. So that's my thoughts for agenda item.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, okay, let us come to the substantive motion therefore, which is that we are about to vote in favour of the standing orders. So we're on page 195, recommendation 2, adopt the LGNZ standing orders for the conduct of this meeting, those of its committees, including community boards, and with some added wording.
I've just put here, I'll put all the following, but with the following changes to 18.3 casting vote and 18.7 members may abstain.
I think we do need to know the wording of the casting vote just to make sure we're all agreed.
That the mayor, chairperson, or any other person presiding at a meeting has a deliberative vote, and in the case of an equality of votes, only when there isn't a status quo.
Thank you. Right. Okay. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against. I'll just do the, are there any abstentions? None. Okay. Thank you. And then recommendation 3, delegate authority to the chief executive to approve minor edits to the proposed standing orders prior to publication. And I think that will cover the definition of, yes. Oh, okay, right. Okay. Nevertheless, I think we'll cross out the or, and there's quite possibly a tweak or two that might notice, and we've noticed one anyway with respect to the definition. And actually, the other thing I'm tempted to say about the note on page 244, for the life of me, I cannot see why we've got 18.7 members may abstain and 18.8 members may abstain.
Yeah, it's been a while, so that
very
typo.
and so I think that is a tweak that picked up. So we're about to vote, delegate authority to the chief executive to approve minor edits to the proposed standing orders prior to publication. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? I do. Councillor Elam's all in favour. Aye. Aye. Okay, we'll adjourn for lunch. How long do we need for lunch, please? Half an hour. Okay.